Hey friends, Ash here. Welcome back to Gents. Hope that you're doing well. Today I've got for you an Yves Saint Laurent Y buying guide. So I'm gonna go over each one of the Y fragrances that you can currently pick up as of this video, let you know the notes in them, the performance, when you would use them, and just give you an idea of each one of the Yves Saint Laurent Y fragrances and which one might be best for you. All of the Y fragrances will be linked in the description, so feel free to check them out there. I'll be linking them to discounter websites where you can pick them up for cheaper than retail, though most of these you can find for retail, and I'll give you the pricing for both of those as we work through each fragrance. Also in the description, you'll find links to multiple fragrance discounters along with discount codes that you can use to save even more money. We're gonna get kicked off with Yves Saint Laurent Y Eau de Toilette. Now, originally, this came out in 2017, but that version is discontinued. The version that you're going to find nowadays is this one, which is the 2022 iteration. So essentially what happened is YSL in 2022 went ahead and discontinued the original Y Eau de Toilette. They reused the name, the presentation looks pretty much the exact same, but they changed the formula inside, tweaked the fragrance a little bit, and for the most part, it was all positive. So in my opinion, actually, this new version, the 2022 version, is better. So there's really no reason, in my opinion, to go seek out the 2017 version and pay a lot more money for that one. You're better off just getting Y Eau de Toilette as it is now. And honestly, if you go buy Y Eau de Toilette nowadays, this is the one you're gonna get anyway. You have to go out of your way to find the other one. All right, full retail pricing on this one for a 60 ml 2-ounce size bottle is $105 US. For a 100 ml size, this one right here, 3.3 or 3.4 ounces, is $125 US. So if you go into Macy's, Sephora, something like that, that's what you're gonna pay. At discounters, on the low end for the 60 ml size, you're gonna be looking at around $55 typically, and for a 100 ml, about 72. But that could fluctuate a little bit up or down depending on the website that you're shopping at. But that gives you an idea of what you're gonna be looking for, again, as of this video at discounters for this one. So roughly $50 off if you buy at discounters. So here is the note breakdown for Y Eau de Toilette. In the top, aldehydes, bergamot, and ginger. In the mid, lavender, clary sage, and geranium. And in the base, ambergris, cedar, vanilla, and olibanum. Interestingly enough, when Y Eau de Toilette first came out, it got ragged on a little bit. A lot of people were kind of hating on it. But with this new iteration, most people agree, like I said before, that it's an improvement and it's been well received. It's extremely fresh, very easy to wear. Might remind you a little bit of like clean laundry if it had a sweeter edge to it. A nice little bit of classiness to it as well, which you find across a lot of the fragrances in the Y line. And this is one that you could use realistically year round, though in winter time, it may not pack enough punch for a lot of people who are looking for something a little bit heavier. So if you do typically find yourself leaning more toward warm, spicy, heavier fragrances during the winter time, you would think of this more as a spring, summer, and early fall fragrance, and it does lean more toward daytime use than evening use. It's office safe, it's a great casual fragrance, great for a day out in general, because it's the type of fragrance that everybody's going to like. It doesn't really have any divisiveness to it. So the opening here, very bright and airy, also a little bit sweet, fresh, and zingy. As it dries down, you have clean lavender and a fresh modern woodiness in the base. Y Eau de Toilette commonly gets overlooked for other fragrances in the line, but it's fantastic in its own right. And if you're looking for just extreme versatility, this is gonna be one of the best in the entire lineup. Next, we have Y Eau de Parfum. This one is from 2018. So I know this one is 2022 and this one's 2018, but like I said, the 2017 version got canceled, got discontinued. So this was the second in the Y lineup. And this one is the most popular in the Y lineup. So Y Eau de Parfum is gonna be the one that outsells all the others, that more people wear, that more people own. Price-wise, it's more expensive than the Eau de Toilette. The 60 ml 2-ounce size of this one at full retail is $125. That's the same price as the 100 ml of the Eau de Toilette. And then the 100 ml of this one, Y Eau de Parfum, is $155 US. At discounters, this one's gonna range from about $69 to $87, depending on the size that you get. And again, that could fluctuate a little bit depending on where you shop. So actually more of a discount available for Y Eau de Parfum in terms of dollars saved than Y Eau de Toilette. As far as the note breakdown goes, this one has a top of apple, ginger, and bergamot, a mid of sage, juniper, and geranium, and a base of amberwood, tonka, cedar, vetiver, and olibanum. And what this one is most well known for is that apple in the opening combining with sage as it dries down. It's sweeter than Y Eau de Toilette. It also packs more of a punch than Y Eau de Toilette. So it projects more, it lasts longer. And because of that sweetness, some people don't like to wear this one as much during summertime, because if you go really heavy, where it's very strong, very sweet, it can be cloying. And so that can cause some people to get headaches. It can cause some people to think it just doesn't mesh very well when it's hot outside, very humid. But that also makes this one better suited for fall and winter time when compared to the Eau de Toilette. It's also great during the spring, and this one is good during day or evening. It's a great night out fragrance, a great clubbing fragrance, a great date fragrance. It has a lot of versatility. So to simplify, Y Eau de Parfum, it is similar to Y Eau de Toilette, but it's sweeter, has a little more of an aromatic touch to it. Not as much of that whole clean laundry type thing going on, that very airy opening. It doesn't have that. And it has slightly heavier woodiness as it dries down. This one is more fresh all the way through. This one's a little bit sweeter and warmer as you hit that dry down. But like I said, as far as popularity goes, the Eau de Parfum is more popular than the Eau de Toilette. Then we have from 2019, Y Live. Now this one is a little bit different because in the US, you're not gonna find this at retail. So you can't go to Macy's, you can't go to Sephora, Ulta, a place like that, and pick this one up. These two you can, this one you absolutely cannot. This one you're gonna have to buy from discounters. And it can be a little more difficult to find at discounters compared to these over here, and that's because it's not as readily available for sale, period. It's not a US market release, and it's $115 roughly at discounters. And that's for a 100 ml size. So it's gonna run you more than Y Eau de Parfum, more than Y Eau de Toilette. Note breakdown wise, it has bergamot, grapefruit, lemon, and pear off the top, geranium and orange blossom in the mid, and then tonka and cocoa in the base, which is kind of odd. That's not exactly how the fragrance comes across. You could actually think of this one smelling more like you took Y, so like Y Eau de Parfum, for example, and mixed it with Paco Rabanne's Invictus. So it has that bubblegummy sweetness from Invictus, but then it has a fresh Y undercurrent to it that ties it in with the Y line. So it's another one that's very fresh, it's sweet, it's easy to wear, very versatile, and it's actually overlooked a lot. This is one of my better compliment pulling fragrances in my entire collection, and I own thousands of bottles. I know for some people the idea of mixing Invictus with Y doesn't sound appealing, but this one just works. In the air, people love it. It's magnetic, big compliment puller. It has great performance. It's one that you can wear during spring, summer, or fall very easily, daytime or nighttime. And I actually don't really get any cocoa here at all. That was one of the more interesting things when this was announced, was that cocoa note. It was like, whoa, what are they gonna do with that? You know, that's completely out of left field. The answer, really nothing. It doesn't smell much like cocoa at all. It's more that citrus, geranium, orange blossom, and a good dose of tonka that you actually get. So Y Live is one that's overlooked, that most people are not gonna be wearing in the US. Other places, maybe it's a little more common. Here, it's not. And I think it deserves more praise than it gets. Up next, we have from 2020, what a great year. No, it was a terrible year. You guys remember what happened in 2020? Anyway, back to this. Y Eau Fraiche was released in 2020. And this is another one that at retail in the US, you're not gonna find. At least as of this video. Who knows what the future holds, but as of right now in the US, you're not finding this at retail. At discounters, it's gonna run you between $110 and $125. So that's for a 60 ml up to a 100 ml size. Again, pretty expensive compared to these over here. This one has a note breakdown of lemon, ginger, and pepper off the top, mint, geranium, juniper, and lavender in the mid, and then cedar and olibanum in the base. And as you can probably tell by the name of the fragrance and the look of the bottle, this is essentially the summer release in the Y line. But it didn't take off as much as YSL had hoped, which is why at retail, you're not really gonna find it. And sometimes actually, it can be very difficult to find at discounters. This is a fragrance that will sell out at discounters, and then you won't see it for legitimately 6 months, and then it will pop back up for sale again. As of this video, it's available, and has been available for a little while now, but it's one of those ones that is kind of like a roller coaster as far as its availability goes. Now, the Y line in general is basically Yves Saint Laurent's counter to Dior Sauvage, or Bleu de Chanel from Chanel. This is the competitor to those fragrances. And you can almost track as time goes on what YSL was thinking with these releases. This is the easygoing one that kicks it off. Very versatile, easy to wear. This one, a little bit sweeter, deeper, more push. This one, a little more youthful, that bubblegummy sweetness helping to capture attention, pull compliments. This one, like I said, for summer. Fresher, zingier, lighter, brighter. The opening here is really appealing. It's got this zingy lemon that's not overly sweet, but also doesn't go toward like a rindy side. And sometimes lemon can come across too sharp, and then it reminds people of like lemon cleaner, household cleaner. This one doesn't really go in that direction, so that's nice. It keeps things elevated. Though if you are someone that really despises lemon in your fragrances in a very prominent way, you probably won't like this one because it is very noticeable when you first spray it on. It has an aromatic vibe as it dries down, which keeps it in line with these fragrances over here. And then the mint in the mid actually combines with the opening, with the lemon there, and really helps open your eyes when you first spray this on. As it dries down, keeps things pretty simple, just a fresh woody base, and the olibanum, again, tying it in with these. It's a great choice if you're looking for something that has a touch of class to it, that's very fresh, as I said, very bright, easygoing when it's warm out. Doesn't have as much push as most of the fragrances in the Y line, which you would expect because it's a summer fragrance. And even though it wasn't as successful as YSL had hoped, it does have a lot of people that absolutely love this one. In 2021, we got Y Le Parfum. So the Eau de Parfum and now the Le Parfum. And this one you can find at retail in the US for a 60 ml size, $160 US, and for 100 ml size, $190. So the price jumped up with this one. It is considerably more than either of these at retail. And at discounters, this is also a little more pricey, at least compared to these, not compared to these. It's gonna be about 75 on the low end for 60 ml, up to about 97 or so for 100 ml. So just a little bit more, but overall, when you consider the savings, you actually save more with this one than those. Note breakdown wise, it has apple, aldehydes, grapefruit, and ginger off the top, lavender, sage, and geranium in the mid, tonka, cedar, olibanum, and patchouli in the base. So it is decently similar to the Eau de Parfum. And actually, of all the fragrances in the Y line, Le Parfum is the closest to the Eau de Parfum. It has great performance. This one lasts a long time, it projects heavily, so it will get you noticed, and it's essentially a more mature take on the Y Eau de Parfum DNA or style. So it has that apple off the top. Like I mentioned with the Eau de Parfum, you get that here as well. And this one has grapefruit instead of bergamot as the citrus, but that doesn't make a huge difference. You also have ginger, sage, and geranium, so all that's the same as in Y Eau de Parfum. But here you have lavender in the mid, which is a bit of a change up because you had juniper and the Eau de Parfum. So the lavender makes this one, again, a little bit classier, a little bit more mature, a little bit more sophisticated, elegant, not quite as sweet as Y Eau de Parfum, though it does have sweetness. And then as it dries down, the woody aspect of Le Parfum is a little bit darker in comparison to the Eau de Parfum. So for some people, they really like the way Y Eau de Parfum smells, but they don't quite like how sweet it is, and they wish that it was, again, slightly more elegant. And that's what this is. I think both are fantastic releases. It's just kind of which way do you want that DNA to go? A little bit sweeter, more playful, a little bit more loud, go for the Eau de Parfum. A little more grown up, a little more mature, and smoother overall, go for Le Parfum. So that was 2021. You would think, okay, 2022 next, but that's when they did this one. So 2023 gave us Y Eau de Parfum Intense. Yeah. Just super unique names. So this one retails for $135 US for a 60 ml size and $165 for the 100 ml size. At discounters, Basically 70 to 95 bucks is what you're looking at. Note breakdown wise, they simplified things a little bit, which is a trend, especially over the last few years. I'm not a massive fan of it, but it is what it is. So if you're unaware of that for any reason, you go back a number of years and you had more notes in fragrances, letting you know there's this in the top, this in the mid, this in the base. As time has gone on, they've really simplified and cut down how many notes that they give you. So this one has a top of ginger, juniper, and bergamot, a mid of sage, lavender, and geranium, and a base of vetiver, patchouli, and cedar. And I know that's not awful. They gave you 3 notes for the top, 3 for the mid, 3 for the base, but it gets worse. And you would think, okay, why Eau de Parfum Intense? That's just going to be what it says, a more intense version of why Eau de Parfum, but that's not what it is. This is not as sweet as why Eau de Parfum. It's extremely noticeable. It's a quite different fragrance, actually, if you smell them side by side. It does have a zingy, fresh opening, but like I said, sweetness is dialed way back. It's more aromatic, so you have more of an herbaceousness to this fragrance. And as it dries down, it's much more of a woody scent. It even has some dry woodiness in there as it dries down. It doesn't carry over sweetness from the opening into the mid, into the base, into the dry down rather, which is what you're gonna get with Y Eau de Parfum. It definitely comes across more mature smelling. Not that a younger guy could not pull this off, it's just this comes across more mature, less playful compared to really all of these over here, but especially the first 3. And so with this doing things quite differently compared to all of the fragrances that came before it, it can appeal to an entirely different subsect of fragrance buyer. It's gonna be a great office fragrance, a good casual fragrance. You could wear this formally also. It's gonna be more of a spring and fall fragrance for me personally, and I would prefer to wear this more during winter than summer. And it works equally well as a daytime or an evening fragrance, either one. So a little more refined, a little more sophisticated, a bit more mature, and also has a touch of a soapy aspect to go along with all those aromatic notes. Performance is good, not quite as good as Le Parfum or the Eau de Parfum for me, which you would think, oh, that doesn't make sense. This is the intense, but it's just the type of fragrance that it is. Longevity is solid. It just doesn't project quite as much. And that brings us to the newest fragrance as of this video, Y Elixir. So this is a 2024 release. At retail, it's $180, and that's for this size right here, a 60 ml. As of this video, they do not have a 100 ml, though I'm assuming that's gonna come down the line. At discounters, it's about $144. So this is the most expensive Y, especially when you consider it only comes in the smaller size bottle for that price. Note breakdown wise, they simplified it. Remember I just talked about that? This has the smallest note breakdown, even though it has the largest price. Now, ultimately, note breakdowns don't mean anything as far as quality of the fragrance goes. That's not what I'm saying. It's just kind of funny that it worked out that way. So, in terms of the note breakdown, it has lavender, incense, geranium, and oud. And when this came out, it was met with a bit of backlash, including from myself, because it's an elixir fragrance. And typically an elixir fragrance is the halo fragrance, the best one in the line. That's why they have the price point that the brands put on elixir fragrances. So when they slap that elixir name on a fragrance, you're expecting the best of the best that that line has to offer. So when this released, I wasn't overly pleased myself with what you got for the price point. But that's neither here nor there right now. This is just a guide about the fragrances. So how does it smell? Well, it's actually quite similar in a lot of ways to Y Eau de Parfum, and even bits of this one, Y Eau de Parfum Intense, and also to maybe a little lesser extent, Y Le Parfum. It's in that wheelhouse, in that style. So when you smell this, you can clearly tell very easily it's a Y fragrance. I say that because there are some fragrances like Sauvage Elixir that don't actually really smell like Sauvage Eau de Toilette or Eau de Parfum. They smell like their own thing. This one does not. This one smells like the line it comes from. It has a bit of sweetness, not as much as Y Eau de Parfum. It doesn't come across that way. It's definitely more classy, more refined than these fragrances here, and also more aromatic. So a bit soapy, very clean, very classy. The performance is okay. It's not amazing. The longevity is good. Lasts a long time, just doesn't project quite as heavily as some of these other fragrances. It's more in line kind of with this one as far as the performance goes, which for some people was a disappointment because again, elixir, you're expecting like the most powerful one and it's not, but it still is enough to get the job done. In terms of versatility, it's fantastic. You can wear this year-round, daytime, nighttime, does not matter. And it's also a compliment puller. People love the way it smells. Now, one of the notes that kind of stuck out with this one is oud. And oud can come across a lot of different ways. It can be something that comes across more as just a almost like dark, spicy woodiness, depending on how it's used in fragrances, especially designer fragrances, I mean, rather than niche. But it can also have animalic facets to it, dirty facets to it. Barnyardy is how it's described a lot of times. Fecal also, which I know most people are not gonna be like, oh, I would love some feces in my fragrance. That would be fantastic. But with this one, when it was announced, oud was one of the big deals because they were like, we're using the highest quality natural ingredients in here that we can basically get our hands on, the best of the best. And oud is gonna be one of the focal points. I mean, they gave you 4 notes. One of them's oud, right? That's 25%. And what a lot of people were expecting was a very dark, mysterious, heavy, rich take on the YDNA, and that's not what they got, which is where some of that backlash came from, because instead it was kind of similar to these. You know, it had that soapy clean aromatic feel to it, that sweetness off the top, and it wasn't at all what they expected. And I bring this all up to say, oud, you don't really have to worry about in this one. I mean, you get a little bit of that woodiness as it dries down, that oud, but it's not offensive, it's not divisive, it's not hard to wrap your head around. There's no fecal aspect, there's no animalic facet really at all to worry about. So yeah, don't worry about the oud is what I'm saying in a long drawn out way. So while I myself was a little disappointed in this one, it was more so my expectations, and what this was didn't match with my expectations, but it was more so the price point. I think just where it sits in terms of the price, you may be better off going with one of these. But if the price doesn't matter, this is a compliment puller. It is enormously versatile. It does smell higher quality when you put it side by side with some of the cheaper versions in the line. It's just, is it worth that much more for a smaller size bottle? And that's gonna be a personal answer. For some people, they're gonna say, oh, it's absolutely worth it because I want the higher quality, more sophisticated take on this, right? I want that and I'll pay for it. Other people are gonna be like, I get the same usability, the same versatility, the same compliments, the same everything using one of these over here. And maybe you actually like these over here that are sweeter and have different things going on than this one does. And then when you compare the price points as well, you're like, it's a no-brainer. This is an infinitely better buy. So that's where you're gonna see a lot of differing opinions with this one, probably more so than any other fragrance. This one has been divisive, and it's because of that. So there we go. Why Elixir? As of right now, that's the last one in the lineup. I'm sure we'll get a new one next year, and I'll have to do an updated version of this at some point. But 2024, there's your lineup. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Let me know which one of these you like the most. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys.